Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, again, wherever you're joining us, however you're watching, whether in your living room, driving to work in the morning, coming back from wherever, we just want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Ethos, where we take time to delve into the Bible. We want to know who the audience was, what these words originally meant. We want to know different rabbinical interpretations all throughout the years. We want to do the difficult work and then share that with you. And so Leo and I were just talking a little bit ago, our producer, that it has been 2 years of study. And I am actually really proud of that. It's rare that you can take a book and you can delve so deeply into it. And so again, I don't know about you, but when you go to hear someone talk about this book, you've probably studied it more than the majority of pastors out there today. You've actually delved into it as deep as many rabbis and rabbinical students would have. And so that's very, very cool for me to share with you and just let you know this is deep study and you've done the difficult work with us. And so thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting what we do every single week, sharing these messages. And again, my goal is at the end, I want to be able to share this whole 2-year study in one big playlist with people. I know that our numbers aren't huge yet, but I think when we begin sharing this, we're going to see a lot of people interested. A lot of people will say, how do you spend 2 years in one book? How's that possible? And I think when they begin following along with what we're doing, it's going to be very obvious. Oh, there's a lot more to this book than I first thought. So again, thank you for joining me in this study. So today, again, we delve into Genesis. We're going to move through a full chapter, chapter 45. Reminder again, anyone that's just stepping into this, we tend to, again, look at the Bible, Torah, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We tend to ask deeper questions. And so I always remind people in the beginning, this is not a history book. Genesis was not intended to be a factual book of dates and specific names and times and periods and all that. That was not the point. They were in the middle of Babylonian captivity, 587 BC, and the main reason, the intention behind compiling all of the stories, all of the beautiful quotes, the messages from kings, all of it was the intention so they would not assimilate. They would not take on Babylonian gods, Babylonian rituals, practices. They would hold firm to monotheism and the ritual of the Jewish nation. That was the purpose of the Bible, right? And so anytime you read about any of these characters, know they saw themselves in the story. Every time you read about a messianic character, it is Israel miniaturized. So with that said, chapter 45, we're going to do some difficult, heavy lifting again, but totally worth it. I'm going to share with you a lot of rabbinical interpretation, but I'm also going to kind of skip through some of the words and phrases that repeat a lot, and I'm going to share with you just some deeper, richer ideas from chapter 45. We're going to go verses 3 through the end. So here we go. Reminder again, Joseph is Israel, right? Not just some kid with a cool coat, right? Joseph is Israel miniaturized. So verses 3 through 6, let's start there. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? So again, context, the brothers came back. Many people think that it's been months or even years, right? And they finally go back because they are absolutely desperate. Again, they need the food. They have to bring their brother Benjamin. It almost kills the father. They're back. He takes him through the test, and then he brings him back, and he's about to share with him, I am Joseph. He just finished weeping aloud, and they're kind of like, wait, what's going on here? So he says, I am Joseph, right? Is my father alive? But his brothers could not answer because they were startled by his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, please come closer to me. And they drew closer to him. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into slavery, into Egypt. But now do not be sad, and let it not trouble you that you sold me here, for it was to preserve the life that God sent me before you. For already 2 years of famine have passed in the midst of the land, and for another 5 years there will be neither plowing nor harvest. 6 through 10. And God sent me before you to make for you a remnant in the land, and to preserve it for you for a great deliverance. And now you did not send me here, but God, and he made me a father to Pharaoh, a lord over all his household, and a ruler over the entire land of Egypt. Hasten and go up to my father and say to him, so said your son Joseph, God has made me a lord over all Egyptians. Come down to me, do not tarry. And you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children and your grandchildren, and your flocks and your cattle, and all that is yours. 11 through 14. And I will sustain you there, for there is still 5 years of famine, lest you become impoverished, you and your household, and all that is yours. Basically, take everything, come to me. And behold, your eyes see, as well as your eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth speaking to you. And you shall tell my father of all my honor in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you shall hasten and bring my father down here. And he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And afterwards his brothers spoke to him, and the voice was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. And it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, tell your brothers, do this, load up your beasts, and go, enter the land of Canaan. There's that comma. And take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat of the fat of the land. Verses 19 through 22. And you, Joseph, have been commanded to tell them, do this, take yourselves wagons from the land of Egypt for your young children and your wives, and you shall carry your father and come. And let your eye not be concerned about your utensils, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. And the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons by the Pharaoh's orders, and he gave them provisions for the way. He gave them all, to each one, several changes of clothes, and to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothes. Notice, the younger gets not just the double, he gets far more than his brothers and sisters. That is, it's multiplied far more. Keep going, 20 through 25. And to his father he sent the following: 10 he-donkeys carrying the best of Egypt, and 10 she-donkeys carrying grain, bread, and other food for his father the way. And he sent off his brothers, and they went, and they said to them, do not quarrel on the way. Interesting that he would say that, right? Do not quarrel on the way. So they went up from Egypt, and they came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive. And they told him that he ruled over the entire land of Egypt. And his heart changed, for he did not believe them. And they told him all of Joseph's words that he had said to them. And he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, and the spirit of their father Jacob was revived. And Israel said, enough, my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. So, let's delve into some of these verses, some of the ideas here, because there is a lot to move through. But there's a lot that just kind of adds to the narrative, right? So look at verse 4. Please come closer to me. And they drew closer. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into slavery, into Egypt. Sorry, I keep saying slavery. Slavery is actually a couple different translations. Whom you sold into Egypt. Now, here's an interesting twist. For most Jewish people, the rabbinical history of this is they didn't actually read it this way. This is more of an English tradition. The way that they typically refer to this is here you see the Rabbah 93:10. He says this. He says, he saw them drawing backwards. He said, now my brothers are embarrassed. He called them tenderly and pleadingly and showed them that he was circumcised. Right? That's the Jewish tradition of this text. So notice this. There's a couple things here that I think are kind of neat and interesting additions to what we read today because of this tradition of reading it this way. One, notice this. He sees that there's guilt and there's shame. Right? And notice he does not take advantage of it. And so deep in the heart of Judaism is when there is a moment of restoration, we do not take advantage of it. We don't hold power over others because we want to find equality, connection, right? We want to find restoration. And so in these moments, they'll often refer to Joseph, right? Do not hold power over those who are asking for forgiveness, those who you need to have restoration moments with. Choose to find equality in it. And then secondly, notice this, he shows them he's circumcised. For us today, that'd be a very awkward thing, right? You just showed him that could get you in trouble, right? But the idea here is very simple for them. Circumcision was the idea that you are Jewish, right? If you were not circumcised, you're not part of that tribe. And so he shows them here, no, look, I am one of you, right? We are one. I am a Hebrew. I am your brother. I know I look Egyptian, but I am still deeply Jewish, right? I am a Hebrew. So it's an interesting little twist to know this is how, when Jewish rabbis read, they have that tradition of understanding the text in that moment there. He actually shows them, I am one of you. I am circumcised. It goes into verse 5. Notice this. But now do not be sad, and let it not trouble you that you have sold me here, for it was to preserve that God sent me before you. Now, I know you've heard this quote before, right? Don't let your heart be troubled. Don't worry. Don't be sad, right? Notice John 14, 1 through 2, and I'll give you many other connections today, I promise. But just from the get-go, notice this. Don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe in me as well. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you. So notice this. This is the moment where Jesus reunites, right, with his brothers, his disciples. This is the moment, right? And so most scholars agree Jesus in this moment, or the writers, however you tend to read it, they are quoting this moment, this Joseph moment. It's a moment, again, where they come back together after death, right? And they meet with their leader. Interesting. So Joseph promises room in his empire, right? Many rooms, in fact. And get this is exactly the moment that Jesus says to his disciples, there's going to be room in this kingdom, right? I'm hoping that it's going to be inhabited. They're going to accept it. Only his will, of course, be like in the heart, a way of living now, right? So again, both of them very interesting. The Joseph moment is basically, look, don't be sad. Don't feel guilt or shame. Understand, I am giving you rooms and a home, a new way of life, a new beginning, which is exactly what Jesus does here with the disciples. Don't let your heart be troubled. Believe me, I am who you think I am. Right? Beautiful. And I'll show you some other connections that are super obvious to most people when they read it with a Jewish background. So, verse 6, for already 2 years of famine have passed in the midst of the land, and for another 5 years there will be neither plowing nor harvest. So he's reminding them, look, hard times are ahead. Trust the promise. Again, this is a reference toward Babylonian captivity, Egyptian captivity. Jews were under this captivity, much like during Jesus' time, right? The Roman captivity. So again, same message, right? Hold on. There will be more difficult times ahead, but the promise is still true, right? That kingdom come reality lives in you. You can begin living it now, begin attempting to find ways to bring that about now, even in the middle of captivity. And when we're freed, we can walk in it fully. There can be deep celebration. Beautiful idea. So we continue on. Verse 7, God sent me before you to make for you a remnant in the land and to preserve it for you for a great deliverance. And now you did not send me. And now you did not send me here, but God. So again, this idea, the writers of the New Testament, I thought a lot about that this week. They are looking back when they're writing about Jesus, right? They have Torah open when they are writing down the different stories and messages of Jesus. And so super obvious in the text, but also know that this text was also used again while they're writing. So basically the idea here is before you make any kind of judgment or whatever, know that this land has already been prepared. I have prepared the place for you. Again, more connections coming. Notice this. It's the theme, right? It is the theme that you find over and over again in the Bible. This idea that the land, the thing is going to be preserved, and ahead of you, because we walked it, because the messianic voice stepped ahead and said, look, things are going to change. Follow the path that I'm paving for you. And soon, at some point, we will get to the river. We'll get to that place and we will walk over into freedom, right? Away from captivity. So I wanted you to notice a couple things. Isaiah 40, verse 3. I know this is going to sound familiar because you're familiar with Mark. Watch this. A voice of one calling, prepare the way for the Lord in the wilderness. Make a straight path or highway, right, for our God in the desert. This was a reference from Isaiah about the messianic archetype, the king. He's actually referring to Israel, right? The messianic archetypes who have led Israel, and oftentimes those were kings. And so he's essentially saying, look, those messianic archetypes are going to prepare the way in the wilderness for the Lord to do the things he's promised. And so again, not a big surprise, they go back and they quote Isaiah 43 with Mark. He says this, a voice of one calling in the wilderness, referring to John the Baptist, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight paths for him. John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness, preaching a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. So again, this theme is very dominant in the Bible. And you can see it, again, I would argue, just think about these characters right here. This is the Joseph story, right? God sends him to prepare the way for Israel. He is a messianic archetype, but we've also looked at a couple other ones, haven't we? Moses, right? Moses does the same thing. Noah does the same thing. Noah prepares his family for a flood. Moses helps them walk through, prepare them for the Red Sea experience. Joshua walks through the river after moving through the desert with Moses. It's a beautiful idea here. The Messiah will lead us away from captivity into the new thing. Will prepare the way for people, right? Prepare it for the people to walk through, for God to move through and help the people into restoration. That's the idea over and over again. And obviously, Jesus did the same thing during the Roman captivity, right? Prepared the way for the Jewish people in the middle of brokenness. 70 AD, their temples again destroyed. People are running to the hills who haven't been murdered there on the streets. It's so sad. But again, prepare the way, right? I'm going to prepare you for the hardships and then the celebration after we cross the river. So good. And you see it everywhere. And Joseph is just one more of those stories. Verses 9 and 10. Look at this. God has made me a lord over the Egyptians. Now notice this. This is a heavy comment. If you were Egyptian, if this literally was what he said, he would experience some chastisement for this, right? That's again why I look at it at a deeper metaphor. Did it happen or not? Not really interested in that question. Not an interesting one for me. But the deeper point here, though, is that God has set him up at a high place. Right? He has been elevated because he's prepared the way. And notice this at verse 10, and you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children and your grandchildren and your flocks and your cattle and all that is yours. So again, two ideas here. The idea that the time is now, right? This idea of Moses, the Moses narrative, all of it, right? Prepare, go now. Go quickly. Don't put any leaven in your bread. You got to go now. That idea is there. But also this one, Goshen, the land of Goshen, it literally means a large mound, a hill. And so the idea, the deeper idea, if you were Hebrew, you'd read it like this. God will place you in the high places above others. He will elevate you. That's how the Hebrew would have read this. God will elevate our people. After years of famine and brokenness and injustice and loss, God will elevate our people. Yeah. And again, if you are in the middle of captivity and you hear those words, that is inspiring. It's filled with hope. God will elevate our people. We'll live on the top of Goshen, right? So good. Verses 11, 12, and 13. Notice these three ideas here. And I'm just going to read those three. Notice, I will sustain you, right? and behold, your eyes will see. So I'll sustain you, I'll give you sight, and you shall tell my father and all of my honor in Egypt and all that you have seen. So you will tell everyone, right? So I'll sustain you, your eyes will see, and you'll share this message with others. Sound familiar? Again, I told you there's so many connections. When when Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were being written, they had, I promise you, the Hebrew tradition, Messianic tradition, it says when they were writing these stories down, they had Genesis and the story of Joshua, right? Sorry, the story. Yes. So this story, they had this open for everyone to read, right? They had the story of Joseph, not Joshua. They had the story of Joseph wide open, picking up all these different elements. And again, I find it interesting. Notice this, 1 Corinthians 1:8, and you'll find this many places. He will sustain you to the end, so that you will be blameless on the day of the Lord Jesus Christ. Over and over again, you get this idea in the New Testament. Jesus' message, life, testament, resurrection, all of it sustains his people. That message of hope will sustain you. Jesus says it over and over again. The apostles say it over and over again. If there's something that's going to make you move through prison, keep you safe, continue holding on to hope, it is that message of Jesus, the kingdom come reality, right here, right now. The promise is alive and well. Hold on, right? Hope is just around, real restoration is just around the corner. Shalom can happen. It will sustain you. Notice this, Isaiah 42:7. You will give sight to the blind, bring prisoners out of prisons, and bring those who live in darkness out of dungeons. How many times, how many stories can we think of when Jesus heals the blind, right? Brings prisoners out of prison. Paul and so many others in the New Testament. Bring those out of darkness into light, right? Over and over again, these words were used, and again, direct references to all of these moments. The Joseph story, Isaiah's messages, over and over again. This is what messianic archetypes do. They pave the way for the Lord to work, right? And then notice this, Jesus says in Matthew 11:4-5, again, I would argue a direct reference to what Joseph's doing here. Jesus replied, go back, report to John what you have heard, what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is preached to the poor. So again, the Messiah heals, gives sight. It's beautiful. And he asks the people, go spread this news, which is exactly what a Messiah would do. And this is exactly what Joseph does for his brothers. Go share with our family. Tell them that real life, the thing we've been waiting for, it's here right now. Make the journey, cross the desert, and here you will find life more abundantly on the top of Goshen. So good. Go tell everyone. This is a very common thing for the Messianic archetype to do. Noah did it. Go tell the world the flood is coming, right? We see this over and over again. The message must be spread. So good. Let's keep going. Verse 17. Tell your brothers, do this, load up your beasts, and go enter the land of Canaan. And take your father and your household and come to me, and I will make you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. So when the Messiah comes to lead his people, even the kings of the land will give the blessing, right? I love this idea. Pharaoh, think about this. When Moses leaves, and his people leave Egypt, what did Pharaoh do? Well, yeah, he gave tons of gifts. And the Egyptian people gave Israelites gifts on the way out, didn't they? This is a very common idea as well. When you leave captivity, when you leave brokenness, when you leave famine, you begin, even your enemies bless you, right? The blessings are so abundant that even your enemies will bless you. Beautiful. We'll keep going. Verse 20. And let your eye not be concerned about your utensils, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. So again, this idea of utensils, don't worry about how you'll eat. Don't worry about the things that oftentimes we get very concerned about. I think you know what I'm talking about, many of us. just know the promised land, this milk and honey way, this is going to be opened for you. And all you have to do is walk in it, right? For Israel in Egypt, they didn't have to do anything, right? The way had already been paved. The plagues had already fallen, right? All you have to do now is just walk. Believe the promise and just walk in it, right? Jesus' message to his people in Rome was believe the kingdom come reality, simply start living it now. Because at some point during this walk, right, we are going to be freed. Good things will come. Keep living kingdom reality now. That was the message over and over again. Verse 25 kind of stuck out to me. So they went up from Egypt and they came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. So the brothers, again, they're loaded with blessings, right? The father is finally going to be reunited with the son again, right? You see the connection, right? Jesus goes back to the Father, right? We have a resurrection moment, forgiveness, shalom, all about reconciliation, reconnection. And so being united is one of the big points in this story. There's reunited moments. The prodigal son, all of these stories, right? They all kind of fit together. But the idea here is father and son, generations will come together again. After captivity, after the famine, generations will be united again. And Israel said, enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Israel, think metaphorically here, Israel. It's about to experience unity again. And so when I read the different interpretations of this moment, just know there was a plethora of them. But almost 90 plus percentage of them, they all had the same connection I wanted to share with you. The idea here is when the Israelites left captivity, they were actually very deeply divided. And this would happen over and over again, and their tribe would begin to dwindle a bit, and they would enlarge later on, but they would become very divided because they would have these different ideas and they didn't always agree anymore, right? And so the idea here, when we leave, the message is we need to be reunited again. We need to find unity. And so when leaving captivity, remember, we do so not divided, we do so united. When we leave captivity, we are one people, right? We are one people under one God. Even though there have been so many things that had divided them, so many different groups and factions that decided to step away, be a little less Jewish, a little more Babylonian, this happened. But the message to the people was this: when we are finally freed, let's put the differences aside and let's learn to walk as one so that we can be one people again. I like what Rabbi Ben Judah says here. He says, Israel must walk Joseph's path through the desert to complete the restoration process. Once the father and son are united, their nation can finally celebrate. This message was and will continue to be our, again, Jewish dominant theme, our one song. I really love this idea here. When father and son finally come back together. And notice again, it takes crossing the desert, right? It takes crossing the desert. It takes intentional moments for us to move back together, to find unity. And when we finally are freed, the beautiful challenge that chapter 45 gives to us right here is that when we experience freedom, we should do it in a way that unites us rather than pushing one group down and the other one up, right? We should find a way to be united as we are elevated. And that is a really beautiful Hebraic thought, but I would even argue a human thought as well. So I enjoyed this today, and I thought this would be a good moment to maybe touch on this topic here: how to stay united when the world is so divided. I have, at the school I work at, I have someone of Russian heritage, and I also have a friend who has family in the Ukraine that works there as well. Yeah, interesting, right? And one of them actually has a Ukrainian flag in front of their classroom. And the other one is not a teacher, but a staff member there. And I was talking to both of them, and I said, how are the two of you doing with this? And I'm kind of spurring on conversation. Not trying to spur up, start drama, but I was curious because they're friends. And they both said, you know what? Both of our governments are pretty corrupt. They were my friend Janice said Ukraine is probably one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and my friend John says, yeah, Russia's pretty messed up as well, and they started laughing about it, and I thought, how interesting, right? Because these two countries are about to be, World War III. How divided are we as a nation over so many things? But it was interesting as they were talking, what I found is they were less concerned with the politics of either one of these countries. What they were more concerned with was how each other is doing, how their families are doing, right? These are very real people in real war-torn conditions. And they were able to say, you and I are human. We actually work at the same school with the same kind of mission. We want to better the world. And we have more in common than we have differences. And I thought that is beautiful. When you can find Ukrainian and Russian people saying, we are brothers, we are one, there's hope in the world. So I wanted to share with you a couple ideas that came up as I listened and discussed with them that. One of them was consider what's really important. When you want to find unity with people and in a very divided culture, I would argue, consider what's really important with that person that is so different than you. Push away biases, the desire to be right. Ask at the end of the day, what's important? And really for most of us, it's going to be life, right? Liberty, the pursuit of happiness, right? Those are things that are important. Family. What's really important at the end of the day? Is it getting a certain pipeline destroyed so you can put your pipeline in? Oil, whatever? No. What's really important is life and family. Those are the things we can discuss. Those are the things that will unite us. Number two, what do we have in common? It's a very simple question, but seek to find commonality first, right? I find I have far more in common with people than I don't. Right? Then I have differences. And when you seek to just ask, oh, do you have this? Do you have this? When you do this, you'll actually find you have even more in common than you even first realized. Seek to find what those commonalities are first. Build a foundation before you begin even having conversations of differences. Number three, seek to do good. I kind of like this one. And this is what I noticed that gave me an aha moment. These two individuals, Russian and Ukrainian backgrounds, they both were deeply impacted by the vision of our school. And that vision, that idea of bettering the world, helping kids develop resilience, that idea connects people. And so when you're doing good in the world, finding ways to bring people together in that rather than differences, bringing them together, doing something positive can actually bring unity in really powerful ways. Anyone that's ever been a part of any kind of mission trip, maybe, if that's your thing, or community project, feeding the homeless, whatever it is, it actually brings people together who otherwise would not have found commonality at first. And then lastly, affirm people. Find ways to lift people up for positive things you see in them. And I would argue the more positive things you see, the more conversation starts, and it just is a snowball. It just snowballs. You can't help but see the good in them. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this one again. This was a good chunk, but it was filled with a lot of really good gems in there that I was excited to share with you. Connections to Jesus, connections to messianic archetypes. It's all there. It's really fascinating. I hope you enjoyed it. Please go to ethos-church.org/donate. Consider being a part of donating to this. I think this has been an awesome journey together so far, and your financial help really does keep us moving, researching, doing these videos every week. So thank you for that. And as always, hit that subscribe button. Let us know if you want to continue being involved in online connections and groups. We'd love to continue working with you. Everyone, love you. I'll see you next week when we delve into chapter 46. We're almost through Genesis. Take care. See you next week.